the word is that NBC News is going to break a big PETA story tonight. So check that out if you're watching Lester Holt. Of course, you're on a first name basis with Lester, right? Aren't you on a first name basis with Lester? You know, I actually, I know we're around the same age. He actually started as a street reporter in San Francisco, doing radio first, right? And actually, I worked as a news writer at one station in San Francisco, or actually Oakland, and Lester was a street guy. And he went from radio to TV, and the rest is history. He is now the guy, right? He's America's anchorman, Lester Holt. Anyway, NBC News is going to do a big story on PETA, or that PETA has broken. Check it out if you are on the East Coast. I think it'll be on in about whenever they run the nightly news, and then throughout all the time zones. So we'll see how it gets impacted or changed by the time it gets out to me out here in the West. But check that out, NBC Nightly News. So a big day here at the Guillermo household. And of course, did you see all that news about the aquarium that went down in Germany? It's like, when you think about it, there is no reason to have an aquarium. I mean, an aquarium is one of those kind of, there's nothing passive about an aquarium. I mean, someone's got to feed and take care of the fish, but it's an unnatural situation, and it uses animals for whose glory? I mean, are the animals enjoying being captive like that? I can't imagine. But the whole thing spilled. That's one of the big stories of the day, that a huge aquarium in Berlin bursts, spilling debris, water, and hundreds of tropical fish out of the Aqua Dome tourist attraction in the heart of Berlin. I mean, they don't have the wall anymore, so what are you going to see in Berlin, right? Well, let's go look at this big aquarium. It burst. Police said parts of the building, which also contain a hotel, cafes, and a chocolate store, were damaged as 1 million liters, that's about 264 gallons of water, poured from the aquarium shortly before 6 o'clock in the morning there. Berlin's fire service said 2 people were slightly injured. Of course, we're down in the third graph of the story. They don't mention the fish, many of whom did not survive. Why do we have this? This 82-foot tall cylindrical tank in the middle of a hotel, the biggest cylindrical tank in the world. Big deal. What's it doing to the fish? 1,500 fish. Now, relate to it as you would your plumbing. You've got something spilling from the second floor onto the bottom. No one's out there saying ban aquariums or ban fish, but there's a reason why animal rights people do not like aquariums and don't visit. I mean, look, I'm married to PETA. I don't see fish. I don't do aquariums. Anyway, that's the big story. Today we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Professor Dan Gonzalez will be with us in a sec. I'm going to bring him on. College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies professor. I'm going to ask him about interracial marriage. I'm going to ask Dan about the history, the Asian side of that, because it's important on this week that we talk about respect for marriage. And Dan knows all that, like he knows it chapter and verse. The Filipino parts, the Asian parts. So we'll bring up Dan to talk about that. And also other things in the news. Brittany Griner's home. Chuck and Nancy's they were having Chinese food on CNN, talking smack about Trump and, in a respectful, good way. We'll talk about the House of Reps. We'll talk about Trump NFTs. Non-fungible token. I thought that's what they called me. I thought I was a non-fungible token. No, I'm fungible, apparently. So we'll bring on Dan, talk about that, and also talk about Title 42, talk about immigration. But first, I want to welcome to this program. Well, look, let me bring up Dan. So Dan knows I'm not leaving you in the dark. Hi, Dan.
Hi, good
Hey, so
afternoon.
yeah, welcome to the program. Hey, I want to talk to you about uh, right off the bat about Asian marriages, about the intermarriages and respect for marriages from the Respect for Marriage Act from an Asian American point of view.
You mean
And
the thing that Justice Thomas seemed to have skipped over?
well, he's he doesn't mind a conflict there. But yeah, but well, let's talk about that because you know that chapter and verse. So I want to read from my column, but first, look, I want to mention how, because it's not quite 2 o'clock. I want to mention that that's when we officially start the show. But in the 3 minutes we have before 2 o'clock, because we do this thing Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. I want to talk about I'm doing this show. I mean, you might be aware of this. I'm doing a show in New York City in February. The festival, it's a fringe festival, sort of in the spirit of Edinburgh and, the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. Uh, they do it in North America, Canada, parts of the United States, notably in Orlando, and also the Frigid Fringe in New York in February. So, February 16th, I'm doing my show, Emil Amok, Lost NPR host found under St. Mark's. And that's the name of the show.
Very good, very good.
Well, it's at the St. Mark's, it's at under the St. Mark's Theater. So I had to sneak in the name there. So you say, I don't know what the name of the show is, but it's Emil Amok and it's under St. Mark's. Oh, that must be the name of the theater. And then they go running to the theater. So February 16th is when I have my first date there. The festival begins on the 15th, but I'm on the second night, 8:10 p.m. Uh, Eastern time. Go there live under St. Mark's Theater. I don't have the exact address, but I'll get it for you. Then February 16th, and the second date is Saturday, February 18th at 5:20 p.m. And then we've got a bunch of dates: Thursday the 23rd, Sunday the 26th, Monday the 27th of February, and then March 3rd, which is a Friday, March 3rd. So I'm doing 6 performances of this one man show, and you've seen me do a one man show, which was Emil Amok's. It was called All Pucked Up, or parts of. You saw parts of All Pucked Up, and it was all right. You liked it. Oh, Dan, I can't hear you now.
Yeah, I was about to sneeze, so I cut
Oh,
the mic
okay.
for a moment.
All right. So,
Everything's good. Everything's good. We got a strong signal.
all right. So, but you've seen my show, right? Oh,
Yeah,
not
no,
not.
I need. I'm badly in need of an update. I wish I
Yes.
could fly out to New York.
Oh, yeah. No,
And,
no, no,
and
no. I got something better for you. You don't have to fly to New York,
oh no.
because the show will be live streamed to your living room. So
Okay.
you buy a ticket and they'll live stream the show and it'll be great. So that's happening. That's happening February 16th through March 3rd. And I'll have more details. It's the New York City Fringe Festival. If you're in New York, you can go see it live. If you're not there live and you say you're like where Dan is, which is, I think you're just a little to the west of Zanzibar, right? Or, or I forget, I
Very
forget
good. Yeah,
exactly
that's
where.
good.
No, you're
It
somewhere.
depends on how you count where Zanzibar is, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I guess west would be somewhat closer.
yeah. So Dan's out there in the world, wherever you are. If you have a decent signal, which is doubtful where Dan is, uh, but you can live stream the show for the price of a ticket. I forget how much the tickets are going to be, but it's not. It's a very small sum. It's a very small sum. It's the New York City Fringe. It'll feature my current updated show, Emil Amok, lost NPR host found under St. Mark's.
Yeah,
February 16th. February 16th. So
yeah.
in New York City, or live stream to your living room.
I'd feel a lot better if you said found alive under
Yeah.
St. Mark's.
Oh, it's intended to be kind of suspenseful.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, lost NPR found
right.
under St. Mark's. It could be, this could be a true crime comedy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, you could be arisen.
exactly.
You could be arisen. The
And
question is, were you just sleeping all that time? And it would help to explain why you've been able to retain the darkness of your hair.
oh, of course. Well, I'm
And
vampire. This is the
well, you could be a time traveler, which
time
is much
traveler.
much less harmful than a vampire.
Well, vampire.
We need all the blood we can get. The way that mass shootings are going.
Well, it's true. Vampires do have a kind of a feeding problem. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you know, a meal with a vampire. Yeah, I'll just take the Emil part, and you can take the vampire. Anyway, hey, by the way, have you seen Reggie the vampire, Reginald the vampire?
No, I have not.
Okay, I'm going to write about this when I write about Christmas movies. It's not a Christmas movie, but it makes me feel like Christmas when I see Reginald the Vampire. It's on Sci-Fi, and look for it in my columns coming up when I write about Christmas movies. I just there's just something. Reginald is a Filipino
Aha.
American, and he's also a vampire. And
Aha.
vampires have to be pretty, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the thing.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to be beautiful to be immortal or something. But Reginald is fat, bald, and Filipino.
Yeah. We
So
have the Filipino culture, right, has a thing for ironies of all varieties.
this is a white person thing. This is a
Yeah.
white person show. It's on
Oh
Sci-Fi. But,
no.
but Reginald is now Reginald in real life is what's his first name? Babylon. His last name is Babylon. You can't forget the first name of the star. Reggie, actually, in real life, is an actor who has gained fame by being Peter Parker's friend in the Spider-Man movies.
Oh yeah. Slightly
Jacob, Jacob
slightly
Batalon.
rotund.
Yeah, Jacob Batalon. And
Right.
they, I guess they shaved his head because he's bald. He's fat. He's Filipino. He inspires me. Nothing like a fat, bald Filipino to inspire me.
Oh
And
well.
I'm
Explicate.
no,
Explicate. Por
I am
favor.
I am
Por
inspired.
favor.
No, first of all, he's executive producer. He is the star of the show, and he's great. I mean, every time, look, and I
So
recommend
how is
this.
this a white thing?
Oh
If
well,
he's
because it's
EP and what did he write it at all? I
no, no,
mean,
no.
just
Now
director.
get this coincidence. The writer of the show is a guy who I went to college with, a white guy named Harley Payton. He's the creator, the writer, and he does these kind of sci-fi things. And so here is Reginald the Vampire. I discovered it when I was watching the World Cup, and they had all these ads for coming Wednesday, Reginald the Vampire. And I'm so out of it. I didn't know anything about Reginald the Vampire. So I saw it. I loved it. It's inspiring. I suggest you see it on Sci-Fi. I think you can get it on demand. The final the final episode for season 1 dropped this week. I finally saw it, and I'll talk about it in a subsequent show. But I'm telling you, Reginald the Vampire was very inspirational. Anyway, Dan, I do want to talk to you about, and by the way, it's not 2:05. Welcome to the program, all of you Emil Amok Takeout listeners who are
I just
regulars.
lost your sound.
Oh, you lost my
I
sound?
cannot hear you.
Oh, Dan, please. I don't know. See,
Oh no.
Dan, Dan has.
I hate to go out and back in again, but it
Oh,
looks like I might
go out
have to
and come
do
back in.
that. Let me see what's
Go out
going
and you
on.
come back in, and I'll talk. All right. So Dan's going to go out, and he'll come back. But anyway, welcome to our program, such that it is. Emil and Mux check out my takes on all things considerable. We talk about life from an Asian American perspective. I call it the micro talk show of the AAPI or the AAXs, the Asian American X, fill in your ethnicity, whatever that is. Asian American Chinese would be AACH, the AH, because AAC would be Cambodian, right? And I'm an Asian American Filipino. So anyway, this is our program. I want to turn your attention to the column that I do on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the ALDEF blog, because this is a week that you saw the President of the United States sign the Respect for Marriage Act. And I know a lot of people were very happy. You know, the LGBTQIA, AAPI, they were very happy. But this is really an act for everyone. Everyone. Gay, straight, no matter what race. And if you're Asian American in particular, my God, they signed the law this week. Keep celebrating. Keep celebrating the passage and signing of the Respect for Marriage Act beyond the weekend, because you had a more important role than you realize in that historical Supreme Court case in 1967. Remember, Biden did reference it, the Levin case. 1967, it legalized racial intermarriages. And I know how important a role you had because I talked to the guy who argued the case before the Supreme Court. But first, I want to share some thoughts about marriage. And naturally, I respect marriage. I was only divorced once. And I respected marriage enough to get out of that first one, which lasted just 3 months. The second one lasted more than 30 years. It's been going more than 30 years. I call it a same person marriage. Both of my unions were interracial ones, Jewish, Filipino, Scotch-Irish, Filipino. As an Asian American Filipino, you might just say, I'm just a born mixer. In both cases, I decided to marry within a week of meeting. You know, that because that's how love works. I tell people, that's how love works. Race was irrelevant to us, but not to others. So I have a deep appreciation for how the new Respect for Marriage Act was all-inclusive in granting federal protection to same-sex and interracial marriage couples. I know some people may have seen the interracial part in the law and thought maybe it was a strange add-on. I even saw one comment, actually more than one comment, at various news sites where I lurk, where someone was puzzled by the interracial part, saying, no one thinks about interracial marriage these days. And I thought, really? I mean, there are no guess who's coming to dinner moments in 2022. And I thought, well, tell that to a white supremacist MAGA type who falls in love with my daughter or my trans daughter. Tell that to groups that insist on marrying within their group and are quick in their minds to benignly other you should you come courting. Perhaps the surprise commenter I noticed the other day was a young person who sees Kim and Kanye, now divorced, or even Harry and Meghan, now embattled, but not by each other. And maybe this person just shrugs, interracial marriage is no big deal. But what if you aren't on a first name basis with the world and legal circumstances block you from the love of your life? I mean, here's the truth. As long as there is racism, there will always be enough hate to make an interracial union blasphemous. Historically, mixed race has always been the original hate double take. They do that double take. I've noticed in mine, it's a little less, but more so than same gender. I mean, remember, LGBTQ were mostly all closeted. You can go back to movements, you can go back to Stonewall, but while they protested Stonewall, most remained closeted. Confirmed bachelors was the euphemism for close buddies. Only really in the last few decades has the closet door been swung wide open in the fight for LGBTQ rights. But we know, gay or straight, there's still a lot of hate out there coming from all directions. We know discrimination due to sexual orientation is real. But racism doesn't go away. Its effects are not diminished. Interracial marriage remains taboo to those who prefer hate. And therefore, it had to be part of the new law. In an era where a conservative court rolls back abortion rights, every right on the books is threatened, not just the recent ones, but the ones we've forgotten and have taken for granted. And for mixed race love, June 12, 1967, that was the day the Supreme Court ruled in the Loving case. You'll recall Loving, Richard Loving, that was his name, a white male from Virginia who married Mildred Jeter, an African American female, in Washington, D.C. in 1958. And then when they went home to Virginia, they were arrested for love. But the law against interracial marriage wasn't just black and white. It was also anything else with white. And that's why Asian Americans should remember a Chinese sailor named Han Sai Naim, who met a white woman living in Virginia who became his wife, Ruby Naim, Naim. In 1952, the two couldn't marry in Virginia due to that ban on all interracial marriages. So they went to North Carolina, where there was no ban on Asian and white marriages. The Naims returned to live in Virginia as husband and wife for years, but then Ruby Naim filed for an annulment based on the Virginia Racial Integrity Act of 1924. Hansei Naim, concerned for his immigration status, went to court to block the annulment, thus challenging the Virginia law. The case went to the Supreme Court, which let a lower court ruling stand in favor of Mrs. Naim. To see the Virginia opinion makes clear the racist underpinnings of the law. Quote, "We are unable to read in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution or in any other provision of that great document any words or any intendment which prohibit the state from enacting legislation to preserve the racial integrity of its citizens or which denies the power of the state to regulate the marriage relations so that it shall not have a mongrel breed of citizens." The desire of preventing a mongrel breed of half Asians? That was the language of the state's high court. Back to the opinion. We find there no requirement that the state shall not legislate to prevent the obliteration of racial pride, but must permit the corruption of blood even though it weaken or destroy the quality of its citizenship. The court's opinion continued. Both sacred and secular history teach that nations and races have better advanced in human progress when they cultivated their own distinct characteristics and culture and developed their own peculiar genius. And so, in honor of the search for that peculiar genius, I suppose, of whiteness or of separateness, the Virginia High Court justified hate. They tried. They tried to go on to the High Court, but their case wasn't heard. From June 13th, 1955, no doubt, when the Virginia High Court issued that ruling, black and white marriages weren't the only verboten marriages. The Naim case meant Asian and white marriages would also be banned. And the man I talked to is Phil Hirschkopf, who was the lawyer who argued the Loving case. And he included the Naim case. Thought so highly of this case as representing, the kind of hate that existed. He included it in the court papers. Hirschkopf told me, Naim was a terrible opinion because it talked about bastardization of the races. The same ugly reasoning, same ugly language that the court applied to black, white was definitely applied to Asian Americans. That's what Hirschkopf told me. And he called it a linchpin, along with the experience that Asian Americans had during the anti-miscegenation years in the 20s and 30s in America. And so when the Loving case, when the Supreme Court sided with the Lovings in 1967 and said it was a violation of their 14th Amendment rights, that was the law. that made marriage freedom based on race concrete nationally. The Loving case struck down anti intermarriage laws in 17 states, as well as all these ancillary laws that people had to have to prevent people from moving to other states to avoid marriage laws or passing property to an interracial spouse. One bad law spawned dozens of others, and it took one brave couple, the Lovings, in 1967, who challenged it to the Supreme Court to make interracial marriage legal in America. That's when it happened, 67. Just think, in 2022, if a conservative court can rule on the Dobbs decision, which undid Roe, and a woman's right to an abortion, they could do the unthinkable when it comes to interracial marriage. That's why it was more than an add-on in the Respect for Marriage Act that was signed this week. That's why Asian Americans have a right to take pride. Asian Americans, gay or straight, have a right to take pride and keep celebrating this weekend. Respect for Marriage Act, same sex certainly, but let's not forget interracial unions. For the law, it was absolutely necessary and a reassurance of our inalienable right to love. And that's my column. You can read it on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. Yeah, Biden signed that law, and I know a lot of people thought, oh, interracial, that's kind of like no. It wasn't just a same-sex law. It was respect for marriage, all marriage. Same sex, same person, same race, different race, all intermarriage, interracial, all marriages. And so now I want to bring in Professor Dan Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University, to talk about the Asian part of that. So, Dan.
Hello. I have to first of all ask for your tolerance because my allergies are driving me crazy. I did take my pill, my antihistamine,
Okay, all
but
right.
I'm still running like crazy. Nose is running like crazy, and I have to,
Well, that's all right.
cut my mic out every once in a while.
I
Okay,
won't.
so what do you want to talk about? The Asian American stuff goes all the way back
Yeah.
to the formation of California as a state,
Uh,
1850. And there were cases that came out at that time that sharply limited. Uh, in fact, they had Chinese in California had no rights. In essence,
yeah.
they couldn't even file uh, prosecutorial cases. There would be no prosecution of crimes committed against Chinese as early as the People versus Hall case in 1850. So they started the California was also covered by the general anti-miscegenation laws, which were the general pattern all throughout the United States and its territories.
When you say anti-miscegenation, that's anti-mixing,
Yeah,
anti-marriage.
anti-marriage, but they also tried to prohibit contact even. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was pretty uniform. So you need to establish that as the major context, right? That's the
Yeah.
major context. Um, the In the 1870s and 1880s, because of the growth of the population of Chinese, um, the California politicians used the existence of prostitution that was instituted to serve Chinese, predominantly male population in the West, and they used that as the moral grounds, right, to prohibit interaction between Chinese and white women. Okay, um, the
Wait. So, in other words, because there were prostitutes here, uh, the Chinese brought, I
they
presume,
brought
Asian
Chinese
prostitutes.
women in, yeah, to serve that population, the male population, that was used as the moral ground
To
to
say,
prohibit Chinese contact with legally to with white women. So it was. I think you made reference to this earlier today that
yeah,
it was white on one side and everybody else on the other side.
yeah,
So it is white versus all people of color, regardless. It wasn't just a black thing. It's
yeah,
a very important point because a lot of immigrants think that it was only anti-black, but it was also anti-Asian generally, specifically at first anti-Chinese. But the words that were used in Civil Code 66, the old Civil Code 66, California Civil Code, uh, used the terms Oriental and Mongoloid. Okay,
mm,
so which was the legal term generalized to everybody that was Asian. In the 1930s, Filipinos challenged the prohibition against interracial marriage by Asian men with white women, and in a famous case, it was the Roldan case, Roldan, and just surely by coincidence, I actually have a copy of this California Supreme Court decision
yeah. And then the
right
roll
here
down,
on my desk.
yeah,
You
roll
know,
down was in L.A., right?
it was an LA case,
Yeah,
and he argued that the laws against Oriental intermarriage with whites did not apply to him because he wasn't Oriental. He was not Mongolian or Mongoloid. Okay, rather, he was a special kind of person. He was a Malay. He was Malay. Okay, Malayan, if you wish.
yeah,
And he was a special kind of Malayan because he was an Ilocano, which is a special kind of Filipino. So
like my dad, like
you
my
have three
dad.
levels. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Me too. You have
yeah,
three levels, right?
yeah,
You have one that he was not a Mongoloid. Okay, two that he was a Filipino, which is a very special kind of person. And within the rubric Filipino exists a particular ethnic group, Ilocano. Okay, it's a lingual and ethnic group. Okay, and that as an Ilocano, there was a high infusion of European blood, particularly Spanish blood. And this was clear from the fact that his surname, Roldan, is indeed a Spanish origin surname, as are the
as
names
ours.
Guillermo and
Yeah,
Gonzalez.
yeah.
Yes, very much so. Okay. So even though we have our Asian looking faces, we could use the roll down argument to say no, 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 we're not Oriental in the way that it applies to Chinese and Japanese and all those kinds of people. And that decision actually lasted for a little less than a year
Real.
because
So it was
by
roll,
night,
roll
yeah,
down one. Roll down one.
yes, he won. He was allowed to marry. They were allowed to marry, but the state legislature moved with great facility to make sure they added the term Malay to the list of specifically prohibited people under California Civil Code Section 66. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. So it wasn't just Oriental or
yeah,
it wasn't just Mongoloid. Now the Malay,
yeah.
the
It
Malay.
added Malay. Okay, they did
And,
everything except point the finger directly at his nose, saying, "This means you, brown boy." You know, but that's what they did. So
and so it means that what year was the Roldan decision overturned?
Well, it wasn't overturned. It was just nullified. It wasn't
Ah,
overturned. It wasn't. They didn't go back to court and undo it. They simply added them to the list, and but you couldn't do it backwards. Okay, it's unconstitutional to make a law and then say that something that was done within the law in the past is now illegal. They can't do that. You can't do retroactive.
all
Okay,
right. So
application.
what?
They try it. They try it on occasion, but it's not supposed to work. It's unconstitutional. So the change in the law would apply to all Filipinos after that time,
So what year was
1933.
that change? What year was that change?
Rolled down was 1933, I believe. So it was the next year, 1934.
So I talk about my dad coming in 1928. He was He couldn't intermarry, and in fact, if he was seen with a white woman, he probably would have been shot and killed,
Yeah.
or
Sometimes, sometimes
perhaps
they
even
did less than that.
yeah,
There have been instances where, oh, they also would annul the citizenship of the woman. That was another law that was passed in several states. They did a lot of things. There was always the threat of violence, and you're right, he could have been shot. They also beat people up regularly. That happened a lot, just
yeah.
simply on the streets. And in many instances, the Filipinos did not file a complaint with the police because, frankly, there were times when the police actually beat them. Um, the police were just as racist as anybody, if not more racist than people on the street.
So if Roldan was nullified essentially in 34,
Hmm.
the anti-intermarriage, anti-miscegenation continued
Yes, until
until
1948.
yeah,
The case, I think, went to court initially in 46, and it was overturned. The law, the anti-miscegenation law, was overturned generally. It was Perez versus Lippold, Lippold, and it
where
was
Perez,
overturned.
yeah,
Yeah,
Perez was a Filipino male.
no, Perez was Mexican, I believe,
Oh,
descent. But anyway, yeah, there's a white person involved. The white, yeah, white woman involved. The Perez case struck down the whole statute, but
so
it didn't strike down a statute on the basis of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. It actually said that the government cannot act to nullify or void unions that were sanctioned by traditional religious institutions.
oh,
So
so
it was struck down on the basis of First Amendment religion rights,
so
establishment and establishment and belief clauses.
if you
Yeah.
married in the church, you were protected.
Yes, uh, any church, any traditional religion.
So that got
So,
Filipinos back in church.
well, there's another interesting situation, which is in the state of California, a lot of Catholic churches, before and during the Second World War, would not would not sanction interracial marriages between Filipinos and whites.
Wow,
So
why? Why?
they would the same racial argument, man. They don't
Oh,
want
oh,
to, what was the you
so
you
look,
were you were
th-
very eloquent in your
yeah,
citation of the court's decision, the
yeah.
rationale in name case, in the Naeem case, right?
Naive.
Yeah.
But
So,
the
and that
thing,
was the same rationale. It's exactly the same rationale.
well,
It
see,
was the same rationale in 1850, and it was the same rationale all the way up to and including 1948,
and 19,
67,
seven,
prior
well,
to
7,
67.
they
Yeah,
reversed it when the
yeah,
Lovings came in. But I only bring it up because I don't think people get lost in love and they think that, oh, well, they just can't see the love. But really, it was almost like a misuse of marriage by people who would promote white supremacy. That's how I view it. Is that too harsh to say? Because I see it as marriage was being used as a tool to keep people from love, which would give which put people of different races together. Uh, the racist white supremacists didn't like that, wanted it stopped, and it really was to perpetuate white supremacy. You can't have race mixing. You can't have race purity if people are marrying each other.
right, right. Oh, I need to clarify the Perez case.
Mhm.
Actually, the reason I was thinking about female spouse is because Perez is actually a Mexican American woman.
Mhm.
So the issue was interracial marriage. Interesting thing is that Mr. Davis, who she was seeking to marry, is African American.
Ah,
So
so
yeah,
Latino,
they were arguing that interracial relationship.
and
Really
they won.
interesting.
They won.
Yes, they did. She won. Yeah.
And so, all right, but getting back to the point that I was saying, is it fair to say that the whole interracial marriage, the bans on interracial marriage, was a last gasp attempt to use marriage to further white supremacy and white purity?
I don't know. I don't know if I would say last gasp. I would say it was definitely a later uh, method. Yeah,
Mm.
to be able to maintain white supremacy. It's still going on now.
In
Okay.
what way?
Well, just because people are allowed to engage in interracial marriage doesn't mean that people are going to be allowed to enjoy the same level of safety free and freedom that everybody else does. There are places you started part of this conversation by saying, it's still not looked upon with ease by a whole lot of people. It causes a second glance many times. In San Francisco, those second glance situations are quite rare, but only for people who are not San Franciscans, right? Do they
Right.
come in and cause the infrequent occurrence of those glances? But if we go out to where, some of the near suburbs, that's still the case today.
Really? Well, I know that I got a second glance with my wife, who is Caucasian, when we went to South Carolina. You
Oh,
know, on a
well,
we
yeah,
went to South Carolina on a family vacation on her side. They go to the South Carolina beaches, and it must have been like around 20, oh, I don't know, like 2000, around 2000, like 20 years ago.
sure,
I mean, that's
sure.
not too far. That's not that long ago, really.
Well, my younger son was in an interracial relationship and he visited North Carolina. And, and this is within the last, I'd say 7 years or so.
Yeah.
And they had a hard time. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I meant when I say that it's still being practiced today. Look, see, it's also the shade, the whole racial thing. Um, I mean, even nowadays, the battlegrounds are the school districts, right? Because so-called conservative, and I mean radically right, individuals and families are wanting to take over control of school boards because they feel that a lot of interracial liberalism is being taught in those schools,
Mm.
and so I would imagine that interracial marriages in places like that, where there's a substantial number of people who are willing to run for office
Mm.
so that they can take positions like those that have been signed into law in states like South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, for example. Uh, in the West, so Idaho has laws like that. Wyoming, I don't know. I think most of those kinds of laws have been purged in Colorado. But yeah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, right? Places like that. And more recently, cases in Arizona, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, Dan, what do we? I mean, the Respect for Marriage Act. It was necessary. You had to include not just same sex. I mean, everyone knows that same sex marriage is embattled right now,
Right.
but it was. I thought it was great that the interracial marriage was included in in the law, and it did surprise me that some people thought, "Oh, why it's not necessary." I mean, we have
Well,
Kim and Kanye. We got we got interracial hookups all the time. I mean,
yeah,
I
and
guess
they're saying simply that it's not necessary because nobody was threatening that as an institution,
yeah,
and that was one of the loudest critics that I witnessed, at least on television, was Ron DeSantis, of course.
yeah,
He said nobody's talking about that issue. And, certainly as far as Justice Thomas is concerned, he did not mention interracial marriage. But
because
it's
he's in
obvious,
one.
yeah, because he's in one. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of a good reason not to mention it.
But I
He
think
can't be an absolute hypocrite.
Yeah, yeah, right. No absolutes in hypocrisy. But
That's
you
right.
know the thing about that is you see the method. You see they no one probably thought they'd roll back Roe, and they didn't roll back Roe. They rolled it back sort of through the side by ruling on Dobbs, which
Right,
enabled
right,
the rollback of Roe. Uh, and that's a similar thing. And then when you have mega types out there who are talking about population, and you got birthers, like when Trump was going after Obama, and you have real racism that exists, how can you say that interracial marriage is safe at all?
right. That's
I
right.
mean, I'm not trying to be paranoid, but it's one case, the Loving case, which struck down 200, right?
Right, right.
All you need is another case to come up, or some judges to say, "Oh, Loving out." You know,
So
here's
they could
another
make
case.
a states' rights argument.
Yeah,
Remember, every time they want to challenge something that has now become a constitutional standard, right, including, for example, the Voting Rights Act, all they did was argue states' rights. They do
right,
that every time.
right.
States' rights is clearly the political and legal method used to overcome federal statutes. They do
A-
that all the time.
And that really is what the Respect for Marriage Act. Uh, it still allows for the states' rights argument.
Exactly.
But it means, but it said that states had to recognize all these marriages,
Even
and
if they occurred in other states.
right, they had to
Right.
recognize them.
Right.
It didn't mean they had to make them legal, and it still gave them the opportunity to do a states' rights thing and say, well, we're going to recognize that the marriage is legal because it was done in another state, but we're going to have our own state law saying it's illegal, can't do it, and that adds to the confusion.
Well, I think
And
they could raise the issue of is this a willful act on the part of both parties, or is there is it
oh,
an uneven, non arm's length relationship, right? And so
some
they
kind of
could
coercion, you mean?
yes, yes, yes. They've
Yeah.
made that argument, I think, positively in terms of arranged marriages within certain religious sects where the men get to choose and the women can be underage.
Mm. Oh yeah.
They've made that kind of so you could apply the same logic of the argument to the possibility of coercion uh, and immaturity.
Mm.
They could try and argue that this person wasn't capable of rendering a mature or an adult decision.
Some kind of mental incapacity. He,
Yeah,
they
it
were
doesn't have
married
to be
under
completely
duress.
mental. Yeah, it can just be a social incapacity. Mental only in the sense that it's about intellectual capacity, not meaning stupidity, but in meaning the ability to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
An intelligent decision.
But isn't it interesting though that we can celebrate this law? Same sex marriage, interracial marriages are protected. Thank goodness for now. But if someone wanted to make us think about same sex, and no doubt they will, or make us think about even interracial marriages, they can.
Right.
And this respect for marriage would be a buffer, but not full protection, really.
That's correct. That's correct.
And
And it's been criticized for that reason.
yeah, yeah, I've heard some real activists say that, but it's important. I mean, so it was sort of codified, but not really. A pathway was codified to
Yes.
protect, but states and people who are haters and people who don't like same sex or people who don't like interracial marriages can still have recourse to like other you
Right.
legally.
Right. Can they do? Can they refuse to serve you?
That's the same sex wedding website case.
Yes.
I guess. And so,
So could they say, well, this restaurant doesn't really, the owners and the people who frequent this restaurant do not believe in the recognition of interracial marriages?
yeah.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, there's that other case, the 303 creative case that the Supreme Court heard the other week. We talked about that. Um, we're all still evolving. We're all still not us as people, but the law in our country.
Right.
And every time you think that we've, the
We've
pendulum
overcome,
doesn't just,
yeah.
yeah,
We've achieved victory over one of those traditional barriers.
yeah, or yeah, every time we think we've achieved justice, well, almost. We got a
Well,
couple
we're
of
facing the same thing, and race cuts across most of the big issues
yeah,
of our time, particularly immigration.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned immigration because that's one of the things I want to talk about. Is it's going to be the big discussion next week, and that's Title 42 when it gets lifted. And Title 42 was now. I looked it up just to be because it gets bandied about like, oh, well, of course you know what Title 42 is, and some people do and some people don't, but it is that part of the U.S. Code that addresses public health, social welfare, and civil rights. Title 42 was a previously rarely used clause of the 1944 Public Health Services Law until Trump began using it in 2020 to prevent migrants from entering the United States. And Title 42 grants the government the ability to take emergency action to stop the introduction of communicable diseases. The Trump administration used Title 42 to designate hundreds of thousands of migrants for expulsion, arguing that allowing these migrants to enter the U.S. may increase the spread of COVID. So here's a kind of an interesting thing. People think that, oh, I mean, if you're on the right, if you're a MAGA type, you think, oh, there was no COVID, but you use a law to your advantage when it serves you to limit the migrants from entering the U.S., which is what they did. So Trump used or abused Title 42 as an anti-immigrant policy, at least, and this is from a, uh, a civil rights website based in Arizona. They claim it was used at least 380,000 times to expel migrants at the southern border, and so we have this situation now where the Biden administration is going to lift Title 42, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to lift Title 42, correct? I mean, you'd have to say it's a good thing to not no longer abuse Title 42. But what is the Biden administration going to do at the
Well,
southern?
we don't know. See, well, we don't know how abusive it was. It appears to be abusive because of the numbers involved. You
Yeah,
know, uh, the first question is who had the authority to make that determination that the people who were coming in constituted a threat. Did they fail a COVID test or something? Okay,
yeah, right,
and if that was the case, they were tested, right? And that was the case. Who had the authority then to determine that they should be turned back? And
right.
when you're looking at, over 300,000 people having been treated that way,
Almost
uh,
400,000. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, was that effect? What was the intent? A legitimate intent because they actually turned back people who were clearly a health threat, or was it clearly an abuse? And
Uh,
that's what I would like to see. I
yeah.
think. See,
Yeah.
and then who's going to bring that case?
Yeah.
How are you going to
Well,
bring that case if you don't have rights
yeah. Well, here's
in
the
the
thing.
Constitution?
Here's the. I mean, the fact that it's being lifted is it's a good thing because no longer can it be abused or misused. All right, great. But now you got to deal with the problem. And that's, they don't get to that part. They just say Title 42 is lifted.
And the Republican House is not going to let them do that. They're
Yeah.
going to try to reinstate 42. That's one. But
Mm,
secondly, they weeks ago said that they were going to impeach Mayorkas.
yeah.
You know,
Well, this is
so
the thing. The right, the Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, they want a divisive issue like immigration to continue. They don't want to solve the problem. They don't want it to go away. It's always been the one of the key, you know, lightning rod type issues that divides an electorate, that divides a nation. I
well,
mean,
what do you think the underlying motivation is? What is really the underlying motivation?
well, you don't think it's it's political preservation of the right, such that it is. I mean,
What is it that they're protecting besides? Well, if they political preservation means that if we let in more immigrants, it's going to threaten our political position, or, our
possibly
possession of
because
power.
they could all be voting Democrat,
Yeah,
and if
but
they
they
do,
would have to be legal first of all,
oh, you're right, right,
and then they'd have to apply, and 5 years, right?
yeah.
Before you can be naturalized, and then you have to take the exam.
So what is the motivation? Well, I mean, I don't. I aside from the fact that I think the Republicans just want this negative issue, because as soon as they solve the problem, they're too dumb to want to take credit for, hey, we solved immigration, you know, which would be, there are a lot of people who would like to say, in my lifetime, we have solved the immigration problem in America. That would be a great thing, but no one wants to solve it because too much pain, too much risk, easier to use immigration as a kind of straw man um, type of issue, that to divide an electorate and to get what you want in other areas. But what do you think? What do you think? Why do you think they don't want to solve it? Why do you think they don't want to move forward to either fix the? They always say we got a broken system. Okay, well fix it. Well, we don't want to fix it. We'd rather this is how we know how to do politics.
Yeah, well, as long as it exists as an ongoing issue, and as long as they keep playing it up, they're going to. It's one of the major elements. If they had a platform, right? If they had a platform, it would be one of the major planks in their platform. Okay,
Yeah,
because there are substantial numbers of Americans and American voters, right, who are racist.
right.
So my position is it's about racial power, racialized power,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I mean,
I mean,
they
you're
the
right. You're right. I mean
even
I mean,
even the liberal positions, like Ted Kennedy's position, right, on immigration, um, was we need to let in more Europeans too.
right.
And so when they opened up immigration in the Reform Act of '65, there was an element of inclusion of Irish, specifically,
Yeah. Well,
specifically.
Kennedy.
So
Yeah.
what is a Kennedy? Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean,
and
did the Polish
and
people
so
get in there?
it was kind of obvious,
Yeah.
and so yeah, why would you do that? Well, because that would make the deal possible because the people who are against it, including conservative Democrats, right? you know, the Civil Rights Act had just passed, and so the conservative element in the Democratic Party hadn't yet shifted over to the Republican Party, right? The Dixiecrats were still there, and they were still very powerful,
So,
right?
so Dan, what is going to get us out of this? Because it seems that we're mired in this is the best divisive, um, you know, uh, polarizing issue that 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 the political class has, and they like it, so they don't
Well,
want to solve it.
yeah.
They could have solved it.
What it comes down what it comes down to is voters, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
so there has to be an educational process that looks at the issue of immigration as a whole. Okay, and most people are not willing to make that kind of investment. You know, I've been challenged by people who said, "What about these people over here that think this way? Right? Shouldn't you also be telling them, you know, what you know, and showing them what the different perspectives are and what the conflicts are about. And I tell them, look, long ago I decided that my job was to educate the educable. And there's going to be a certain number of people, not necessarily people in my classes, right? Not necessarily among the people who willingly show up at public events because they want to be better informed, okay? But the people who don't want to be informed, who are resistant in all manners to the issues that we have to face in reality, and they're not educable because they're unwilling to be educated. So, are you saying that I have a responsibility to make that attempt? Okay. And my position was, ain't got the time or energy. You
Well,
know?
that is the responsibility of someone in our representative government. It's got to be the responsibility of the parties, responsibility of the officials. I don't know. Maybe public education,
Well,
civic.
if we, what about religion?
Well, yeah,
Why
they
is
have
it
a
that
role.
there's
They
such
have
a
a
heavy
role.
concentration of people who are supposedly devout Christians, right? That are devout racists.
Yeah. Hey, look, they have a role. Remember, when Bush was trying to like pass off social programs in a cheap way by saying 1,000 points of light, all these
Oh yeah,
churches,
oh yeah,
I mean that is the easy way to sort of like defer your role to these other folks, underfunded,
right.
undermanned.
That's right.
You know, they're not going to solve the problem. But if all you want to do as a political player is to preserve your right to polarize and to galvanize your side around such a polarizing issue as immigration. You always keep this as this is politics. It's sad because those DACA folks, some of those DACA folks are probably going to, there's going to be a generation that gets old enough that they like begin passing it away while they're waiting.
Right,
It
right.
probably, I mean, is if Congress keeps kicking the can down the road in terms of reform, I mean,
I think what could happen has been happening at a very high level among Asian immigrants, and whether or not they are
education.
undocumented or documented doesn't matter. A lot of them, after they get their, especially if they get their college degrees, and that applies to DACA as well, they leave the country. A lot
Oh,
of them are going back to their parents' country or their own country if they came here as children, right? Because they see more opportunities there in the growing urban market, right?
right.
And so a lot of the big companies that have been competitors against the Chinese, right, in electronics and some hardware. I've been noticing the quality of, for example, automotive tools, both electronic as well as steel. Actually hardware coming out of India has improved a lot, and so they're going to become competitors against Japanese tools and even Chinese tools, just as the Chinese became competitive against the Japanese. A lot of Chinese tools are perfectly useful.
So better talent trained in the United States to go back.
That's right. Some become binational at first, right? They'll pop back and forth between the U.S. and their country of origin, quote unquote,
Yeah,
and then they establish businesses, and it's easier for them to establish businesses in the old country very frequently.
I see. I can see that. I can see people, getting U.S. educations and going back to from the dollar world to the peso world in the Philippines.
Sure,
Cheaper,
sure,
cheaper.
that's happened. I
More
think
bang for the
I
buck.
think one of the great examples from my personal experience in the classroom is the period in the late '70s and all throughout the '80s
Mhm,
when huge numbers of Saudis
mhm,
and people from men from students from UAE
mhm.
and Saudi Arabia would come to the United States, and they had a lot of money. Sometimes they would buy whole nightclubs just to be able to party, and I remember when they bought Bojangles. There's a nightclub in San Francisco, and yeah,
Bojangles.
Bojangles got bought, and it was owned by Arab students.
Oh,
And they were, they did they kind of looked like a Saturday Night Live,
yeah. Well,
skit.
they owned the place and they did valet parking too.
Yeah, and they dressed in the really loud
Oh,
disco style. The
yeah,
Nick
I remember that.
shirts, right? Hand painted shirts.
The Nick. Remember those Nick
Yeah.
shirts? Nick
Yes.
shirts, and
No,
they go around.
didn't you have one of those?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was in Houston during the disco era. You had your Nick shirts and your double knit pants, and
Yeah,
you walked
double knit
around.
pants with no freaking pockets.
Yeah, yeah. You walked around with your chest out because you were discoing, and you had your little
Yeah,
disco
don't
ball.
forget the chain. Don't You had to have a
Oh,
chain.
the chain. Oh yeah, the chain.
You had to have a chain. So that's what that's what. And these guys, there were huge numbers in our classes at SF State. Same thing true at USF.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also there were Indonesians
Oh yeah,
and
Indonesia.
Malaysians. They
And
were,
then a lot of money in Asia. A lot of money.
Chinese, Indonesians, and Malaysians. And you could still smoke on campus, and they smoked clove cigarettes. So the place smelled like cloves, spicing, right?
Yeah.
The smoke was that strong, man. But anyway, yeah. So they get their education here, and they go back and join,
So,
families that are already part of the nouveau riche
well,
in the old country.
clearly, we're
So,
not going to solve immigration in the
nope.
next five.
It's about sharing power. The
Yeah.
beauty of America is the structural elements, however exclusive they might seem, have the potential, right,
Mm,
for all people who are present in the jurisdiction of the United States and the many states, right, to be able to enjoy equal levels of access to all of the different resources that are theoretically available in the United States. That's the beauty of our system. The problem is uh, not everybody is that dedicated to the realization of that potential.
yeah,
So
I can see that.
they believe that they draw the line at when we can stand on equal footing and actually compete favorably against the white members of the white majority, the white racial majority, cultural majority. And so that threat has been made very clear for now almost three generations. Okay, remember when uh, the Winho Lee case
Yeah,
came up,
2000.
and
2000.
every our dear Senator Feinstein, uh, they fired all of the workers for TSA that
Mm,
were not citizens,
mm,
and a substantial number of them were Filipinos
yeah.
who were legal residents but who were not citizens, and they got
Oh,
fired.
oh, they were
Okay,
just permanent residents.
yeah, that's right. And they got fired. And I thought, well, die fire. What are you doing? I mean, that's not sending a good message. And she is very familiar with the Filipino American community locally, right? I mean, there's dozens, if not tens of dozens of
Yeah,
photographs of her being taken with leading,
sure,
Filipino leaders, as well as members of lesser known, organizations. She was right there, and she was getting a lot of strong support from Filipino Americans statewide. Um, and then the Wenho Lee case came up, and she and others wanted to get rid of all of the potential Chinese, non-American born scientists. And I was laughing in my classroom. I said, "Go ahead." And they're saying, "Why are you saying go ahead?" And I said, "Because Livermore will stop running." you know, if they get rid of all the people, and I don't know how they're going to replace them.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
why are the people here in the first place? Why is it that so many people in the sciences, right, are foreign born immigrants? Okay, why is it that they're at the top of their fields? And at that time, on the East Coast, Filipino doctors were
right,
starting to become the top of their field in research institutions like the Mayo Clinic, like Johns Hopkins, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
NYU's Medical, right? And there they were. I mean, you were meeting some of these
Oh
people,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
when you were living out there, the DC area, right? and some of them were not citizens. You know, they were permanent residents. They were legally present, but it
So
wasn't required that they be citizens. And they like to refer to themselves as expats, right?
yeah.
We're really Filipinos and living in the United States, okay?
So
But
how are
but
we? How are we going to get? I mean, how do we get Congress to move to reform all the things they need to reform in immigration law, from things like
well, either
DACA.
you have to have an overwhelming Democratic majority, which could never happen, especially in the House,
Yeah.
or you're going to have moderate Republicans who are willing to work across the aisle.
See,
That's what's going to have to happen.
yeah, and
You
so
know,
we will be talking about. I mean, I've been taught we always talk about immigration at some point. Uh, as a talk host, I remember talking about it in the 80s and the 90s. I
yep,
mean,
yep.
and we haven't had any real major immigration reform in how many years has it been? Like at
Oh,
least
at least
15?
30 that I can recall.
Oh, so the last one would
You
be
know.
maybe in the 90s?
Yes, well, obviously 1990
Yeah.
immigration, and there was a writer involving Filipino
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
veteranos in World War II in the 1990
All right,
uh,
so we're
legislation.
gonna be talking about this for a while. All right, so look, let's go. We got a couple other things in the time we have remaining. I know you wanted to talk about Trump and the NFTs, the non fungible tokens. And
Yeah, I just don't want to. Just spare me showing any pictures, please. I don't want to do it.
well,
I
non
can't do
fungible
it.
tokens. I mean, they're Trump trading cards, and I guess the cards are they. The way to the idea of about non fungible tokens is that they are kind of like they're kind of etched in stone. It's like having a real physical digital product that doesn't
That's right,
change.
and you
So
own it, so
yeah,
you can reprint it.
and the
If
value goes
make
up because
hardware.
it's you can't change it. It's non fungible.
Right.
But is it? I mean, he's selling Trump.
Yeah, but it's also tied to crypto. So
Uh, yeah,
crypto market is tanking and will stay tanked for a long time. And that's going to be really interesting. How,
yeah,
why did the crypto market tank so quickly? Because it got no reserves, man. It's not like the banks, right? And you
yeah.
had to have a major failure like this one
The
in
bank
order for
speed.
people to pay attention to it, right? And
Yeah,
and and the the Republican Party generally, okay, and maybe as much as a third to a half of the Democratic Party don't understand crypto.
yeah,
Okay, so how NFTs are a little bit more solid than crypto, but they don't understand crypto, and until they do, and then come up with some regulatory devices, the same way that they regulate banks, right? Banks have to have a certain amount of cash reserves, right? And that was improved after the debacle of 2008, right?
right.
But what happened was they shrank back from some of the legislation that was passed as a result of the inflation economy that occurred between 76 and 81, right? So
Yeah,
they
but
passed regulations and then they rolled those back during the 80s
yeah.
because of the dot boom, okay?
Well, what I don't get about the crypto thing is uh, people should have seen something like this. There was a lot of trust that. Well, first of all, they said the blockchain. You
Yeah,
can't. The blockchain was you can't cheat the blockchain, right?
that's right.
This is better than having a receipt. You know where things are. It's not going to. You can't have the kind of fraud.
Every transaction has a unique identity, yes. And
Right.
so it's digitally impossible, right, to commit
Right.
fraud.
That's
And
what.
and that's true.
Yeah. And
Okay,
that
that's true.
gave people some security, but
Right,
the guy that you give your money to who
right.
runs the blockchain, it doesn't keep him from taking money out and sticking it somewhere or using or misusing it some other way.
Right.
It's intent. So
But it doesn't control the market value. Okay, so it's the I always think in terms of Proposition 13, right?
mm,
Because Proposition 13, one of the arguments was it's going to preserve the availability of single home family housing, right, for the future.
mm,
And I said, what a sack of doo doo that is. Okay, that is a sack of manure. Okay, and people said, why keep saying that? I mean, they're capping out the tax, and I said, yeah, but it doesn't. How do you cap out the fair market value? That's free market, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? Inflation drove prices up, right? Okay. And then after that inflationary period, they came back down. But did they come back down all the way to like 1975 prices? No, every time it goes up, the value keeps going up, regardless of whether or not there's foreign investment. And you remember during that inflationary period when
Oh
people were
yeah.
starting to do stupid things like, I'm going to take out a double mortgage on my existing home and buy two more houses, right? And then I'll sell them, right? And before the mortgage becomes due. And people lost their homes.
Yeah.
There was filings for bankruptcy were huge in the late 70s and early 80s. Okay, but
Yeah.
then what happened in 2000, in the early 2000s? They went right out. Not the same people necessarily. Sometimes they were the same people. Went out and they got loans because you didn't have to prove income.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's
well, that's what
ridiculous.
that gave us 2008, right?
So, yep. I mean, some companies were giving out 110% loans. How do you do that?
Well,
It
they had a
hasn't
lot of
even
money.
increased its value. That was
They had a
really
lot of money.
crazy.
They needed to make the
Oh,
loan, so
and,
here's the money. Give
and,
us the interest. We'll live on that. Oh, sorry
yeah,
about your house.
and so what happened? We got BKs all over again,
Yeah.
right? And then the market went down. Homes lost prices, but did they go back down to the 2000, let's say early 2000 level? The answer is no. So the general trend is always upward, right?
Yeah. For I think for real estate, that's true. Um, anyway, I want to talk also about. Let's see. I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about Brittany. I have Brittany Griner here. She put out
Yeah, she put out a
an
statement yesterday.
Instagram. Yeah, and the Instagram was really touching. Here, let me read it. For I like her story. It's a happy story. She writes, "It feels so good to be home. The last 10 months have been a battle at every turn. I dug deep to keep my faith, and it was the love from so many of you that helped keep me going. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone for your help." I can't imagine 10 months. I mean, when that story first
Yeah.
broke and she was behind bars as they were trying to figure out what was going to happen to her. People were thinking, oh, maybe she'll come back quickly. Uh, that was 10 months
In
ago.
a forced labor situation. You
Yeah.
can't underestimate that. Forced labor.
I mean, she was she's sounding pretty cheerful in the things that I've seen, the stories I've seen, but really, I guess we got to start talking. I mean, the positive thing is, if she wasn't a basketball player, uh, she or a star basketball player, she probably would still be there, right?
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Because
her
she
fame,
because
her,
she's a public figure. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
she is a star basketball player, but she was such a star that she was a real public figure too. So it's not only the basketball thing; it's the public figure thing.
well, if she was just like a she went to play in Russia for big money, but some play for just for the love of it and also to augment their WNBA salaries. If she wasn't a big star, well, then
Yeah,
Russia wouldn't mess with her. I mean, Russia got the leverage because she was a big star, but Russia got what they wanted. I think Brittany Griner she's found her value elevated in terms of what she can do with her life now
yeah.
because she can advocate. She has a higher profile. People, uh, she'll always be remembered for this ordeal, and this is now the new pathway for her life. So I think for as hard as the 10 months were that she had to live through, the fact that she survives is great. And now I think her life, becomes even better because I think she's going to be an advocate for those who've been left behind.
It would seem so. Yeah, she says she's gonna play again next year. At least that's her plan.
Yeah.
But Yeah, remember Kaepernick. That's all I have to say. You
Yeah.
know, they,
Well,
she took when she took a knee, they went after her too, just like
yeah,
they went after Kaepernick.
yeah.
Okay,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Kaepernick has he's paid a price, but he hasn't been in a Russian prison. He hasn't been
that's
in
right.
a
That's
gulag.
right. No, I'm only talking about the way people treat them when they get, when they're here. So
Yeah,
now she's back, she's out, and they were slamming her, the whole time. You
yeah.
know,
But I think that she's out there. She's a prisoner of the Russians. I think that elevates her and it makes her almost a kind of she's a kind of martyr that people will say she's got a lot of credibility. We believe in her. I think that's going to help. She's got to find the right message and the right cause. I mean, the cause right now is other prisoners like Paul Whelan and people
yep,
left behind. But
yep.
she, I think this is going to be ultimately a good thing for her. I think. That's just a feeling I have. All right. So, Dan, let me ask you a couple more things. Did you see this about Schumer and
I don't know if we really did. We okay. We'll put a marker at Schumer, but I don't think we talked about. We didn't conclude on the Trump NFTs.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me about. All right. So here's the thing about the Trump NFTs. They're trading cards,
Yeah.
and even people who are Trump allies, like Steve Bannon, thinks it's a stupid, crazy idea. Which is the first time I'm really ever in agreement with Steve Bannon. But to me, it says that I don't know what is Trump thinking. I guess Trump is.
I, you know, you know, it, Emil, my dear friend. Okay, it takes egos to do the work that we're doing.
Yeah,
You to put this show on,
yeah,
and to do it with discipline and regularity, and
yeah.
and me for being crazy enough to be your guest. Okay, it is so it takes a certain amount of investment of your ego,
Mm.
and so, but even for us, it's really difficult to understand the concept megalomaniac in
Oh, yeah,
in its fullest expression.
right.
We are
True.
witnessing the fullest expression, of a moronic megalomaniac, right?
Yeah,
And it's just refreshing to see people like Bannon call a spade, right?
yeah.
And I got to double check on the Mike Flynn thing, but even Flynn said it was crazy, you
Well,
know.
it's just a like it's a misuse of whatever it is that he still might have the panache, the whatever
Well,
whatever
the
Trump.
biggest thing he has is being the next president, and
Right.
so everybody is seeing this beneath presidential behavior. But but when did he do anything that was a presidential
Well,
status, man?
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, except he stood on platforms in three different places where we're talking about adversaries of the United States outright. People who fire missiles and stuff. That say this got your name on it, man. And he
clear.
stands there and he says, "They're my buddies." He said, "I'm in love, with Kim.
Yeah.
Please,
Yeah. Look,
bless our love."
the the only thing he could do that would be worse than Trump NFTs is maybe coming out with a new line of Trump steaks or something like that.
That's worse.
I think Trump steaks would do because vegetarians would say no, no, no on Trump steaks
Because that's
unless they were Trump vegan steaks, and he wouldn't be
yeah,
vegan.
yeah. Then we wouldn't be so sure. We'd want to see the chemical and biological composition of that stuff, man.
Right? We would
How
be.
did you make this?
All
you
right.
know,
So, so does this put the Trump NFTs? Do you know anyone who says I want one?
I think there's going to be millions of people who buy them.
Oh man.
I think it's going to have trading value. So if you're really sick, right, it's like buying guns, right? If you know that the gun companies are going to do a rush, right, because a Democrat gets, what they do, right? Every
Yeah.
time a Democrat's running for office, they're going to take away your guns, and what
Yeah.
happens? People go out and buy more guns, right? So in this instance, right, he does his NFT thing, and I think people who are really I mean, let's face it. It's
Yeah.
like TV evangelism. You know,
Like,
he's going to get people. People are going to pay the money.
I'm
You
gonna
know,
buy. Yeah. So like he does something crazy, I'm gonna buy another Trump card.
you're like
I mean, that's what they are. They're Trump
just
card.
from strictly an investment point of view. That's right. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if they're going to outlaw the possession of AR 15s or like equipment, right? Then there's gonna be a run on those, and there's already. I
But
was shocked, man. Isn't there? Aren't there over like 30 million of those things in circulation in the United States?
what Trump cards?
No, That- no, it's been too soon, man. It's
Uh,
too fast. No, AR-15s or
Oh, I
like
didn't
weapons.
realize there's that many.
Yeah,
But
no, I'm not sure. I
several
got to double
generations.
check.
There's several generations.
Yeah,
No, I see where, yeah, Trump cards. It. This is the former president of the United States issuing really something that is akin to the new Beanie Baby. This is going to be like, oh, I got to get a Trump in it, and I'm going to keep him. And you can see those shows on TV say, well, this Trump NFT,
yeah.
and this is compared to the Princess Bear.
You know, as far as if we look, here's the dangerous thing, man. For me, when I saw some of those cards, okay, and the artwork right involved. And I was especially he was wearing Ray-Ban like aviators, man. So
Ah,
he's kind of stealing from a Biden trademark, right? But
oh, yeah, yeah.
when I saw some of those, if you think about them in terms of high camp, remember that?
Oh, yeah,
Remember
yeah.
high camp values, right? Sort of ironic comic value. They look like that. I mean, they have that value. So there's a whole nother reason to buy them. It's just that they're, you know,
There
and
will be archaeologists looking at the Trump cards, and they will, in the future. Yeah, in the future.
uh,
I mean, there's some really wild. Is there Trump as Superman?
yes,
Trump is.
yes,
My goodness, that's.
yes.
Oh, they
And
sell out. Look, Donald Trump digital trading cards sell out. Prices soar after much mocked launch. This is 5 hours ago.
yeah, but who's saying that though? I mean, is that
Oh,
is
this
that
is
on
in
is
the
that on
daily.
Twitter or what?
But this is in the Daily News. Also, the Hill. Trump's digital cards sell out within a day.
Yep.
So, I mean, there are people who are just going to buy it because it's crazy. Uh,
They're going to make money. I mean, if it all sold out within a day, it's already going to go over value. So if
yeah,
you're in for $99 a piece,
yeah,
it's
45,000 cards
right.
and sold for 99 each. Top, top. Let's see, they're trading as of Friday morning. And all right, we missed out. Look, I don't want him president, but I want a damn Trump card.
Yeah,
The put,
what are they trade? What are they trading at right now?
I don't know what they're trading at right now, but they sold for 99.
Oh yeah, So
They
if there were
probably
only 45,000 of them printed and they sold out, then the question is he going to put out a limited edition? A second edition? Okay, but
uh,
because that will bring the value down. I didn't realize there were only 45,000.
well,
Uh,
according to this, yeah, all 45,000 tokens sold out within half a day of launch, according to
sure.
OpenSea data. 99 apiece. Trump cards amassed 4.45 million, and the makers of them are set to make additional money from the 10% creator fee on the secondary market. So he's laughing to the bank, I guess. But
Yeah,
I mean, look, what,
I think the people on the left are calling it the continuing grift. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay, so call it a grift if you want. What he did was completely legal. So what you
I'm
have is a
yeah,
bunch of people that want to buy the damn stuff.
not supporting him, but like I said, I got let's see, I got I got a Trump foam head that, that's worth nothing, and I'd rather trade one of these for an NFT anyway.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
that
right.
would
So
make a good top of the toilet decoration.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So now, Dan, one thing I want to talk about before we leave: Harvard
Oh boy.
has chosen for its 30th president
African
a
American woman.
African American woman, Claudine Gay. I don't know her. She looks young.
Yeah,
She,
she looks done. Yeah.
she is experienced in politics at Harvard. She was the dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. She was a dean of like the humanities. Prior to that, she was a professor. She was a in government there. She was a grad student there, undergrad at Stanford, Haitian, daughter of Haitian immigrants. I mean, I think she's a good pick. I remember when we first talked about who wants to be president of Harvard, we thought, well, would it be something for Obama or something for, is there someone out there who wants to be president of Harvard? But he had to be. I had a feeling it had to be a person of color. I thought
Okay.
I thought maybe an Asian American.
Nah, nah. Harvard is still busy trying to do the right thing with African Americans, and remember they have a history with
Oh, slavery.
First Nation people too. So,
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, so that's always going to be the emphasis is going to be black first.
Well,
Uh,
I
yeah,
thought about that, but I thought, oh, well, it comes at a time when they're getting sued by these wrong way conservative Asian Americans on affirmative action. That maybe there would be something. Yeah, but
right.
no, no.
No,
All
that
right.
would be too. I think that would be too political.
Yeah. Well, so what?
There's sort of this middle rail
Yeah.
of don't ever mistake that middle rail for progressivism, right? Because it ain't.
Well, wait. Well,
It,
so you think it's a positive sign? They
oh, I absolutely. I think it's interesting also that she's being chosen because of the political side of her work. The social and political side of her work. Because
right.
she's a biologist, I believe. So
No, government
is she really?
professor. Yeah, she
Let
talks
me.
about race. She talks a lot about race. She talks a lot about race and politics, society. Yeah, she
Yeah,
was
yeah, she's on the public affairs side, but I've got she's a professor emerita of molecular biology.
no
That's that. Well, let me double check other sources, but I'm looking at Claudine Gay.
professor molecular biology. I think it was government was her.
Well, no, that's she does policy, and that's the government side of things. But that was it says yeah, person of
Wow.
color, second woman.
Well,
Yeah,
that,
well,
that's a, that's a side that I didn't understand. I mean I thought it was the sciences,
says
but
she a PhD in government.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, I don't know where the hell that molecular. I got to double check on that, man. I don't know where that came
I
from,
think
but
that
I
was maybe another Claudine Gay.
we got to watch our sources, man.
Yeah,
Scientist studies democracy and political. Yeah, that's what I saw on TV was democracy and political participation. So
yeah,
she's done a lot of surveys on political participation,
yeah.
which is really interesting. That Harvard would go that route.
Well, I'm surprised. Like I said, a lot of people. Uh, it's about time. I forget the year. What year? 16 something for Harvard, and they have John Harvard there on a sitting at University Hall on a chair, calcified, a white guy, and I just think it's about time they had someone who. I mean, it took 50 years, for me to look at a Harvard president and see someone who was not white, and I'm glad it's her. I'm glad it's her. So, I mean, I'll have to see how she does, but they had a committee look, and she was their pick, and I I'm glad. I'm glad. I mean, it's about time. I mean, it would have to be someone like a Katanji Brown Jackson, someone like that. She's at the court, and this woman knows academics. She's in the industry. It's not like Ben. Well, Ben Sass, was Ben Sass a an academic before he took the post at Florida? He left the Senate.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I mean, a lot of people like these cush university jobs, right? Donna Shalala, University of Miami. She left HHS or left the Clinton administration. Um, anyway, university presidents. I think they're going to play a role in this next age in higher ed, and it better be more diverse than it was in the first 400 years.
Yeah, people are going to be questioning that because Harvard did a really great job of getting into news whenever it hired minorities in high positions, right? So it made it look as though they were really a lot more diverse than they were in reality. You know,
Oh yeah. Oh
the same
yeah.
thing was true of Berkeley, right? Everybody
Oh
looks
yeah.
at Berkeley and they say, "Oh wow, man, they're so diverse." And the reality was the opposite of that, all the way into the '80s and '90s.
Yeah. This was they have a black president now,
Yeah, yeah.
and he wasn't the first, was he?
I don't remember another black president.
Yeah. All right, then. I mean this is the thing. This is in terms of civil rights and higher ed. This is sort of the era where the the diversity seeds that you plant begin to sprout, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I don't know that it's about the seeds that they planted, because a lot of the people that have risen up to uh, a place where they could even be seriously considered.
Mm,
Okay, a lot of them uh, are young or younger,
yeah,
and a lot of them are also, most of them were second generation, right? They were born here,
right.
and I think that has a lot more to do with uh, their existing, that they were able to make it.
Oh yeah, the second
Excuse me.
generation thing is a big thing.
Yes.
It's huge. It's huge.
So that was a major contribution to the conditions, right, that allow for people of color being considered for really important positions like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that really is not the product of actual policy.
No,
Okay,
not policy. It's
yeah,
more it. Well,
it's indirect at best. It's indirect at best.
you had to
Right?
have those people there in the first place.
That's right.
Policy enabled them, but
Right.
I look at our parents. They were the immigrants. They came here, and it's hard for me to conceive that my father without a I don't know the extent of his education. I don't know if he went to college. I don't know if he went to the colonial high school the colonial school that the U.S. set up. During the during the time of the colonization. He was born 1906, gets out 2028, 1928. Does not go to school. Does not, you know, it's hard for me to think that I'm gonna. It's a huge jump, is what I'm saying, for someone like myself, considering that background. I mean, it happens, right? But it's like how many generations after slavery does an African American, I mean, truly exceptional ones rise in spite of slavery?
Right.
But it was very difficult for the African American community,
Right.
right? And so I'm not saying slavery and what it was like for first generation Filipino immigrants. But Filipino immigrants who came in the 20s who were forced to work in the fields or who found no other opportunities but the fields and came during the Depression and faced similar kind of Jim Crow type laws in California. It's about as close to emulating or replicating what it was like for African Americans, but for Asian Americans.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
not. I mean, were some beaten? Not to the same degree as blacks in slavery, but Filipinos were beaten. Were they discriminated against? It's just hard. Your where you are in society is determined a lot by where your parents were,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
And so that's why I don't want to give short shrift to policies made that enable people to be the sprouts of, that, they're the beneficiaries of the policies that allow for people to rise.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. The policies are important, and they're enabling, but I always think of the way that Obama was treated, for example, just as an example, but other people before him were treated similarly. And that's the assumption that we were all the beneficiaries of affirmative action, and that we would and what that means is we're unqualified.
Right.
That the only reason we're able to get into those positions was because of affirmative action policy and practice, and that therefore we are unqualified.
But
Okay, so
clearly this woman
that's
on the
my
gate.
point.
Yeah.
She's clearly qualified, and whether or not she was the beneficiary of any kind of affirmative action policy, and a lot of people who have reached the point where they could be seriously considered for these kinds of positions have exactly the same kind of track record.
Yeah.
Okay, but back in the '80s, when it was publicized that so many Asians were getting into the Berkeley system, to the UC system, and into Berkeley particularly, that we on a national basis we constituted less than 5% at the time of the total population, and
Mm.
yet at national schools, Berkeley is supposedly a state school, right? But it is of international demand. It's a it's a destination campus, a global destination campus. Then they said, well, they're only less than 5% of the total population, but they're over 20% of the admissions to UC Berkeley. And
Right.
so the attitude on the street, and I had students come from Berkeley back to state because they didn't like the being confronted by racists on the campus at Berkeley.
Yeah.
They
Well,
actually said that. They actually said, I got told that because of me, my brother, people would assault them
mm.
physically
Well,
and
tell me,
say, stop.
you don't think no one's going to challenge Claudine Gay saying, "Oh, this is an affirmative action hire." But
Oh,
in
come
some
on. They
state,
do that all the time, man. They did
okay,
it to Obama.
yeah, that's true. But
The
in
guy
some
made law
states,
review at freaking Harvard, and then they're going to say, "Well, I want to look at his. I want to look at his." I've had former students that got their LLDs at Harvard that are working at a state university now, one of the CSUs, and when she showed an LLD from Harvard, they didn't believe it. They went and checked on it.
mm,
Okay, so
yeah,
there it is, and she was Asian American.
yeah. Well, I believe that. I mean, look, you're right. I'm assuming that if people look at Claudine Gay's record and they say, "Oh, she is qualified," but there will be people
Yeah,
still who
just
will
because
say,
she's black and a woman,
"Yeah,
and or a
yeah."
woman.
But yet, at the same time, you can say it's because of affirmative action they were looking for a black or a person of color or a woman, and thank goodness they found someone qualified
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if she was,
Affirmative action may have played a role, but I think public perception the fact that Harvard has, oh, yeah, for decades, right, have to look at the exclusivity of the institution on the one hand, right, and there's the exclusivity in and of itself, if it's based on actual academics,
Mhm,
okay, is not a bad thing, okay, uh, because it's consistent with merit, all
mhm.
right. But if exclusivity has to do with race, ethnicity, and class, okay, then it's problematic because to whatever degree it's undemocratic, right? So the notion of democracy is everybody gets equal access. We at least get a chance to try, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So if affirmative action applied to her situation, that she at least gets the opportunity to try, that's a good thing,
yeah.
okay? Uh, but that's not the way affirmative action is perceived by the majority of
Right,
Americans. I feel
right,
today.
right. But the fact that she's also qualified, that also goes against people's perception about how affirmative action works. Here's a qualified person. She
That's right.
can't. She should not be overlooked.
That's
And
right.
but in the end, the final point on this topic is really Harvard got a person who now becomes its face. The face of Harvard is not white. The face of Harvard is African American. The face of Harvard is in keeping with the times, where it must be reflective of a population that is becoming more and more browner,
Yep.
a population that is more diverse. And this is one of the elite colleges of the world with like $600 billion in what do they call it, in endowment. I mean, it's huge, right? Is it 600 billion? Is it,
I don't
no,
know. I didn't look.
60 billion? 60 billion is the endowment. I get my numbers mixed up, but I
Well, when you start hitting the tens of billions, it's understandable.
it,
But but now trillions are common, usage.
yeah, I mean trillions is let's see, I mean endowment. I put down. I just need this number so that it increases by 11.3 billion to how much is that? I got to get the right number. Oh, 5.8 billion. Oh,
Okay.
well, that's her operating revenue, 5.8 billion. So the endowment has to be more than that. I thought are you looking it up?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Harvard endowment. Oh, 53 billion.
There you go.
So 53
So your
billion.
60, your 60 wasn't far off.
Yeah, but I think I said initially 600,
Yeah, you did.
which would be a lot. 600.
Well, that'd be crazy.
That'd be crazy. They would be their own country.
Sometimes they acted as though they were their own
Yeah.
country.
See, it's like inflation. I'm sorry. That was a hallmark of inflation. So, Dan, look, I appreciate you coming on, talking about same-sex marriage, talking about the Respect
We
for Marriage Act.
Those are biggies.
Yeah,
You
and
know, the risks are still there, okay? Because there are people who are still resistant to the whole notion of actual equality. There are still people who are deeply invested in the belief that by nature, okay, some groups are superior to others, some groups are inherently inferior and lack the capacity for improvement. You
and
know,
you can't go marrying them.
you can't you can't go marrying them, and you can't be hiring people like that into positions of authority because they don't have the capacity, man.
And you're just encouraging them to wreck the racial purity that is God given, right?
That's right. That's right. I hope
That's,
that people don't take that slice and then say that this is what we said. But anyway, there
uh,
it is.
well,
The one thing we didn't talk about is the new guy is pretty good.
oh, you're talking about the 49ers played last night and they beat
Yes.
the Seahawks. He's pretty good, but he's smaller than Trey Lance. He's not as good as Trey Lance or Garoppolo in terms of his release, but he's very confident. And for what he does, he plays, as they say, he plays within his talent. I like him. I feel good about him. And God, I don't think the 49ers can get rid of Trey Lance, but I think Brock
No, I
Purdy's.
don't think they would want to. There's all kinds of shuffling going on, and it kind of comes down to how he performs. We got three more regular season games, then we got the playoffs,
Yeah.
and people are saying Garoppolo will probably be ready for the playoffs. And it'll then turn into an interesting exercise. I like the part early this season when they switched off between Trey Lance and guys that are no longer with the team.
Yeah. Well, that is an interesting way, like the Giants, start relief pitchers, starters, right?
Yeah,
As opposed to one guy finishing as much of the 9 inning game as it possibly can. They have like guys pitch 1 inning, 2 innings, whatever. So let's move to the Giants. They got Carlos Correa,
yeah. But
and
wow, man, ridiculous amount of money, dude. I mean, wasn't that that's only 10 million short
yeah,
of what they offered Judge, right? And
13 years, 13 years,
13 freaking years. I mean, isn't he around? How old is he now? It's like
28,
28. Yeah,
20.
28. Yeah,
So it'd be 41.
41.
Uh,
Well, and it's not a pitcher, so he could,
Probably can DH, can hit. But
yeah,
I don't know. Like Carlos Correa is good as a shortstop, but frankly, I just don't see him as the guy. He is not the guy. He's not. I mean, I hope I'm proven wrong. I mean, his stats show that he's okay. He's not a home run hitter. It's like 20 consistently 20 home runs, but he's not a guy that I'd want to see. Like, hey, let's go to the ballpark today to see Carlos Correa.
right.
Yeah,
We'll
I would say,
see. Let's see how they build him up.
yeah, I would say let's go see.
Let's see whether or not he's worthy of a Subway commercial. You know,
Well, I would say let's go to. I would say let's go to the ballpark to see Tim Lincecum. Or let's go to the ballpark. I would see a starting pitcher.
right, right.
Because this was his day. But Correa,
That's yeah. It's pitchers really that have been the face for, but they're short. With the Giants, the pitchers are short lived.
yeah,
They have 3 4 years of really high level, and then when they start not being consistently high level, they get burned.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not as excited about them. Slightly more excited about the 49ers. A little less excited about the Warriors, and I'm not even thinking about the Sharks. Although I do watch hockey. I do watch I like the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had a Filipino player, uh, Jason Robert or Nick Robertson, who got hurt, but
Yeah,
his brother Jason plays for the Dallas Stars and is a super. They're both Filipinos, half Filipino American, and Jason is the big star, the big brother. Nick Robertson got hurt. He's sort of
yeah. We got to give them. We got to give them the Dinuguan test, though, man. I mean, how Filipino are they, right?
oh,
Really?
they're Filipino. Their mom's Filipino, and they're from Southern California. And yeah, the Robertsons are Filipino, but Jason Robinson's a big Filipino. He's like 6 foot. Well, people say 6 foot. That sounds kind of small. Well, like in basketball terms, but you're in hockey, 6 foot. You put on the skates. Now you're 6'3", and he is for the Dallas Stars. He is a Filipino American NHL player, and his brother was coming up, younger brother Nick Robertson, but he got hurt. So that's when I put on my Filipino lens to look at hockey. That's what I look at. I look at the Robertsons, see how they're doing, and that's it. Oh, World Cup, France, Argentina. No, you did something to your sound. Oh, can't hear you. Oh, Dan, did something to
It's
your
going to
sound.
be a great game. It's going to be
Yeah,
a great game. I think it's France. But Argentina has played well.
You think it's France? I don't think it's going to be France. I think it's going to be Argentina. I want Lionel Messi to win and then
Yeah,
go away.
because he's old. This is going to be his last one.
Yeah, I want
You,
him to
you're
win.
such a romantic man.
Yeah, I want him to win, do the tango on the skirts of the French. Look, I would normally be a Frenchy guy because I went to France during high school. It was like an exchange thing. I have practically French blood, but for some reason I look at that team and I don't see I don't see as good a team as Argentina. Boy, and Messi, man, those kicks, those free kicks,
Yeah, yeah.
corners. I
Okay,
I like
okay.
to see them win. Well, friendly bet, two Olympia bet.
No, man, we're gonna have to go get good. Okay. What are we? Yeah,
Two,
we'll get
two,
that. Yeah, are they going to be vegan lupias?
yeah, they're vegan Olympias. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All
Okay.
right,
Two Olympias.
two
Not the
lupias.
fresh ones. We'll get the fried ones. Okay.
Oh, okay. You don't like the fresh ones? I love the
I
fresh
like the
ones.
French ones, but I like the crispy. I don't eat them that
The
much.
fried guy, yeah.
I
You're not
want
that
to
much
eat
of
the
a
fried
fried
chicken.
guy.
I want to eat the fried. All right, we'll go for it. We'll go the fresh lumpias. We'll two fresh lumpias.
Yeah, with that garlic and peanut butter,
Yeah. We'll
sauce.
put that
Oh
stuff.
man, that stuff is so good. I'm
All right.
starting to salivate now.
Okay.
I'm salivating.
All right. Dan thank you, Dan.
Thank
And
you, sir. Thanks for putting up with my runny nose.
no problem. Get well. We'll talk to you soon. Talk to you soon. There he is, Dan Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Professor Emeritus, Asian American History, Filipino American History. If I want someone to talk chapter and verse about Asian American anti miscegenation, anti intermarriage laws, I go to Dan, and Dan delivers. Always, we talk about news. He wanted to talk about NFTs, non fungible tokens, which some people think that's what I was when I went to Harvard. No, I was a fungible token in college, I think. All right, that's it for our show today. Hey, I'm here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. We do this live because this is like working out, like going to the gym, standing up, talking, trying to see, like, what is it like to stare into the camera and talk live and then to record it? I mean, it's like dealing from, it's just like a little notes. I don't really have a script. We talk Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Check it out at Emil Amok on Twitter. Oh, Twitter did something nasty today. I know my time on Twitter is numbered, limited going forward, I'm sure. Facebook, fb.com/Emil Guillermo Media, and catch his show. See it on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. I put the replays up on amok.com. Show 440. Oh, show 450. This was 450. Hey, regular listeners know. Hey, on these Friday shows, we repeat them throughout the weekend, so cache them. I'll talk about my show coming up in New York in February, and I do another show in March. I'm in Ishmael Reed's The Conductor in March, also in New York, and it's kind of an exciting time. I mean, I'm not breaking. I'm going out, doing things. That's rare for me. I'm going out of the closet. Anyway, I end with a little meditation, a little loving kindness meditation. It's where we consider people. We induce their images in their head, people we love, people we hate, people we're indifferent to, people in life, our dogs, our pets, our companion animals. Think about them and we say these things. And funny thing, a little loving kindness is if you show love to all, it comes back. Sometimes double, sometimes treble. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. may you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till tomorrow, or next time. Mahal